Девушка из Ипанимы. Olha que coisa mais linda, mais cheia de graça. Ela é a menina que vem e que passa, num doce balanço caminha do mar. Moça do corpo.
Holy! There's a post!
Hello, welcome to this J2Games presentation of video game comparisons. My name is Dan, also known as YoshiM on the forums. Welcome to the program. To kick off this episode, I wanted to compare my favorite game, and a very popular one for its time, Ghouls and Ghosts for the Sega Genesis. Now, being the moderator for the TurboGrafx 16 board, I wanted to hopefully find a title, that title, on either the TurboGrafx 16, which of course it's not, or on the Japanese PC Engine, in which I also found out it's not available for that either. So I did a little stretching for this, and I'm trying to keep everything on the straight and narrow, to compare apples to apples. But for fun, I decided to do a little digging and found that Ghouls and Ghosts was actually released on the next generation version of the PC Engine TurboGrafx 16 called the SuperGrafx. Unfortunately, the system really didn't last long and only had very few titles released for it. But Ghouls and Ghosts just happened to be one of them, and I was very surprised with what I found after playing it and comparing it to the Sega Genesis Mega Drive version. So, for our first episode, here we are. A comparison between Ghouls and Ghosts Genesis versus Ghouls and Ghosts SuperGrafx. I hope you enjoy. The first thing you'll notice is a presentation. In the Genesis Mega Drive version, when you start playing, you'll start at the level map and then begin play. However, in the SuperGrafx version, we are treated to an opening cinema of Arthur's love being struck down, along with our hero getting knocked off his horse. Very nice touch. Immediately, you could probably see a difference in the color. Here in the SuperGrafx version, the number of colors looks somewhat subdued. Compared to the Genesis version shown here. While this version is more rich in the palette department, the SuperGrafx version looks to have better animation. Arthur seems to have a smoother stride when he runs, and the nimbus that surrounds his magical armor when it charges is better animated, with lightning bolts that are released in a more spectacular fashion than on the Genesis. In the Genesis version, you can see the trees in the foreground twitch to the force of the wind, with leaves blowing about in the air, followed by a sudden downpour of rain. On the same level in the SuperGrafx version, not only do the trees bend more realistically, but the background trees and grass react to the wind as well. The rain looks as though it's actually falling rather than just being flickered on the screen. About the best example of the animation is probably shown here at the first stage's boss level. Here's the Genesis version. And here's the SuperGrafx version. Which do you think looks better? Here are a few stills showing the subtle detail between the two systems. Here's the Genesis version, and here's the SuperGrafx version. Genesis version, SuperGrafx version. Sound and music between the two are also noticeably different. Musically, the SuperGrafx version seems to have more voices, making the soundtrack more rich. The Genesis version, on the other hand, doesn't seem to have that same richness. The main theme sounds more electronic, with the bass being more subtle. Sound effects are a toss-up. The Genesis version seems to have more pop and volume. While the SuperGrafx version's effects are softer, not as explosive, and also has a different tone, as you can hear with these guillotines. One of the most important aspects is gameplay. Control-wise, the games are identical. In the Genesis version, you can choose your difficulty level, like Practice, shown here, or Professional, which can increase the amount and speed of enemies. To balance that, the player is given infinite continues and has progress points, so the player doesn't start back way at the beginning of a level. In the SuperGrafx version, the difficulty can't be changed, but it seems to fall in between the Genesis game's Practice and Professional modes. Enemies aren't too overwhelming in number. However, upon death, the player starts further back. As you can see, I was put back at the midpoint of the first level, as opposed to starting right at the boss battle like you could in the Genesis version. You are also only given 3 continues. So, which is better? Personally, even though I love the Genesis version, this version just trounces it. Sure, it's not as colorful, but the better animation, more even difficulty, with the pressure to beat the game in only 3 continues, makes me wish the SuperGrafx survived. If Ghouls and Ghosts were this good, what else could they have done?
McCoy was a boy who could play, you bet. Oh, how they swayed when he played on his old cornet. He's got a smile and a cute little style that's all his own. He'd mute his old cornet, and then he'd make it moan. Do-a-da-do-a-da-do-a-da-do.